Okay, let's get right into it. We're going to deconstruct how an AI actually decides what to say. And here's the thing. It's not a process of understanding. It's a system of mechanical probability. Once you really grasp that system, you can command the output.
This sentence right here, this is the core idea for everything we're about to cover. See, bad outputs aren't a sign that the model failed. No, they're actually a very precise, very logical reflection of the instructions and, all the ambiguity that we feed into the system. So let's talk about the statistical illusion and why small changes cause these huge problems. You've been there, right? I mean, we've all been there. You're an experienced AI user, you make one tiny little tweak to a prompt, you just change one word, and suddenly the output quality completely collapses. Or it just veers off in some wild, totally unexpected direction. The real mystery here isn't why the AI is sometimes wrong, it's why it's so inconsistently brilliant.
Which leads us to the question that trips up so many people. If AI doesn't actually understand, why does it feel so intelligent? We're going to unpack this, but not by looking at it as some kind of user error. It's really a fundamental misunderstanding of the system's mechanics. What we perceive as intelligence, well, it's an illusion created by a very different process. So let's pop the hood, let's really deconstruct this black box. Because the unpredictable behavior of these models, it's not random. It's actually governed by three core, interconnected mechanisms. And I promise you, understanding these will fundamentally change how you interact with any AI from now on. All right, mechanism number one, and this is the most important one to get right. You have to internalize this. You are not talking to a thinking entity. You are interacting with a probability engine. This is like the fundamental physics of the entire system. And that completely redefines what intelligence means here. The model isn't choosing the best word. It's just choosing the most likely word based on everything that came before it. It's simply matching patterns it learned from billions and billions of examples. That feeling of coherence you get, it's just an emergent property of incredibly powerful statistics. It is not, and I repeat, not genuine comprehension. And this brings us to a really critical trade-off. The model is optimized for fluency, for making sentences that just sound right. It is not optimized for truth. And we, as humans, we're wired to equate confident, coherent language with correctness. And let me tell you, that is this system's most dangerous illusion.
So here's the big takeaway from this first mechanism. Changing a single word in your prompt, say from summarize to analyze, doesn't just ask for a different task. What it does is fundamentally reweight the entire probability field from the very first word of the response. It literally sends the AI down a completely different statistical path.
Okay, let's move on to the second mechanism. If the AI is a probability engine, then you need to think of context as its fuel, because it has no memory of its own. None. Now, this is a huge mental shift. The AI doesn't remember what you said 5 minutes ago. For every single turn in a conversation, the entire chat history, every document you've uploaded, it all gets fed back into it as its temporary brain. Its entire world, its whole awareness is only what you put in the context window right now.
And this, of course, creates another trade-off, the context budget. If you give it really dense, rich context, like a whole research paper, you'll get highly aligned, super precise outputs. But that's computationally expensive, and you risk introducing a lot of noise. On the other hand, give it sparse context, and yeah, it's cheaper, but the model has nothing to work with. It just reverts back to its generic and frankly, often useless training data.
You know, this right here highlights the core difference between a novice and an expert. An expert doesn't really have a conversation with the AI. They treat that context window like a programmable workspace. They're deliberately adding facts, pruning out irrelevant details, and structuring information to build the exact temporary brain the model needs for that specific task. All right, on to our third and final mechanism. So if probability is the engine and context is the fuel, then framing is the GPS. It's what tells the engine where it's even allowed to go in the first place. This idea of a probability basin is absolutely key. Think of it like this. Every word exists on a giant statistical map. So when you use a framing word like analyze, you're not just using a word. You're activating an entire neighborhood of related concepts, words like critique, components, examine. You're not just asking a question. You are literally defining the arena where the answer is allowed to exist. And you guessed it, here's another dilemma. A strong frame, like act as a skeptical financial auditor, will give you incredibly consistent results. The problem? you risk getting stuck in a loop of confirmation bias. But a weak frame, something like, give me some ideas, well, that allows for novelty and creativity, but it dramatically increases the chance of a generic or totally misaligned response. So the bottom line here is this. The quality of the output often has less to do with the specifics of your question and everything to do with the implicit lens you provide. Are you asking for a diagnostic, an advisory, a creative brainstorm? That frame you set is often more important than anything else you type. Now, these three mechanisms, they don't operate in isolation. Not at all. They form this really tightly interconnected system that determines the generation path. So let's trace that path and see how it all fits together. It's really a three-step sequence. First, your frame defines that entire probability basin, the whole playing field. Second, the context you provide populates that basin with specific data points. And only then, as the third step, does the probability engine select the most likely path through that data, all within the frame you created. Okay, so what happens when you don't understand this system? What's the cost of all this ambiguity? Well, the price is high. It is the difference between commanding this tool and being constantly, deeply frustrated by it. And these are the real-world costs we're talking about. Professionals wasting entire days just trying to refine one simple output. Developers blaming the model for what's actually a context error on their part. Creators getting drowned in endless revision cycles. And maybe worst of all, analysts who dangerously trust a confident-sounding but completely shallow synthesis. Which brings us right back to where we started. A bad output isn't a single point of failure. It is the logical, totally inevitable result of accumulated instructional misalignment across your frame, your context, and your prompting. This is what leads us to the mindset of expert users. Their edge isn't about knowing some secret magic words. It's not about that at all. It's about how they think. See, they think in systems, not in sentences. And this slide really shows the difference. A novice gives a vague instruction, right? Write an email. But an expert constructs a system. They define the frame, act as a senior copywriter, persuasive and urgent tone. They provide the context. Here's the product spec sheet, and here's the target audience persona. And then they constrain the probability with a super precise task. Draft 3 subject lines, each under 10 words. See the difference? So, to wrap this all up, let's turn this entire system into a practical diagnostic tool for you. The next time you get a bad output, stop. Instead of just rewriting the prompt again, I want you to analyze your input. Ask yourself these 3 questions. First off, what pattern are you invoking? This is all about your frame. Did you ask for a summary, a critique, or a brainstorm? You need to be precise about which statistical neighborhood you're trying to activate. Second, what context did you provide? This is about the model's external memory. Did you actually supply all the necessary facts and constraints, or did you leave some critical information gap that forced it to guess? And finally, what lens are you setting? This is what steers the probability. What implicit bias or perspective did you embed in your request? Because the model will find the most probable path through whatever lens you provide. It doesn't just answer your question, it reflects the very structure of that question right back at you.